Christianity, the second of the monotheistic religions. So, without further ado, let us begin the second of the monotheistic religions to develop. This religion develops very closely out of Judaism, which we just finished studying. So, we got to go back to the Hasmoneans, the kings of Judah following the Maccabees' rebellion. Now, there are several kings that reign, and we eventually get to the reign of two twin brothers, Yohanan Hyrcanus, or John Hyrcanus, and his brother Aristobulus, both the second of their name. Now, at this point, we are in Judea, and what's now become the issue is that Aristobulus is the king who is on the throne. He was the favorite of his mother, the queen. Now, John Hyrcanus believes that he is the rightful heir. So, in the area was Gnaeus Pompeius Magnus, or Pompey the Great. So a little background on Pompey the Great. He was a Roman general and statesman. He was a member of the First Triumvirate. He had been a senator, even though he was too young to be a senator. He served as a general. His military exploits were so impressive, he was allowed to take the cognomen, that is to say the nickname. Romans had official nicknames called cognomen, and his was Magnus, meaning the Great. His ascent to power had actually so terrified the Roman Senate that they attempted to slow his political ambitions by giving him what they believed to be an impossible task. They tasked him with ridding the Mediterranean of pirates. Now, they gave him full authority over the sea and a stretch of land up to 3 miles inland, and said he had as much time as he needed to eradicate pirates. They assumed it would take him decades, if not a lifetime, to accomplish the task. Pompeius Magnus did it in 3 years. Now, Rome had had trouble with a local king named Mithridates Tigranes over in the area of Pontus and Asia Minor and that whole area. Now, over in Asia Minor, there was this king, Mithridates Tigranes, and this guy was tough. He had a well-trained army, and every time the Romans fought him, he managed to retreat. He managed to keep from being captured. He also built up an immunity to poisons, which made him difficult to assassinate. The Roman Senate, finally at their wits' end, gave Pompey the Great the task of eradicating Mithridates Tigranes. And like that, he did it. While still in the region and without authorization, he turned south to the last remnant of the Seleucid Empire and decides to conquer it while he's there. So he does. It's while he's conquering that last remnant of the Seleucid Empire that he bumps into John Hyrcanus. John Hyrcanus II, of course. Now, dear Yohanan, he decides that what he wants to do is he wants to be king. So he makes his case to Pompey the Great and asks if the Roman general and his legions would accompany him and march him back to Jerusalem so he could take the throne. Pompey takes one look at this kid and realizes he's going to be easy to manipulate. So he obliges, and he marches on Jerusalem. John Hyrcanus is installed on the throne, and Aristobulus II flees for his life. So John Hyrcanus is established as a puppet king. That is to say, a ruler who reigns by the grace of a foreign power. So while John Hyrcanus II was king of Judea, he was king in name only. The real ruling power behind the throne was Rome. From this point onward, Judea will remain a province of the Roman Empire. Now that Rome has acquired Judea, they run into a bit of a problem. Now, Aristobulus II has fled to Parthia, the historic rival of the Romans. Parthia was the second great Persian empire to emerge. Now, The Romans have a problem. Under traditional Roman law at this period in the Republic, all citizens, while they were allowed, all subjects could worship whatever gods they liked. However, they also had to worship the Roman triad: Jupiter, Juno, and Minerva. This presented a problem, as the Jews were exclusively monotheist, and would, as Antiochus IV Epiphanes had found out, were prone to rebel violently if someone attempted to make them worship any other gods. And that would be a problem for Rome, because a rebellious Judah would definitely turn to the Parthians, where their other king was waiting for support. And that would have given Parthia either an ally or a province on the Mediterranean coast, which would be very bad for the Romans. No more Roman Sea, no more Mare Nostrum, no more the Mediterranean as their exclusive stomping ground. So the Romans cut a deal with the Jews, a law called Lex Judaicum, or the Jewish law. And the law granted Judaism an exception to that rule. So long as the Jews remained loyal subjects and offered sacrifices to their God for the good of the empire, Judaism would be left alone and would not be obliged to worship the Roman triad. The Herodian coup. So in the 1st century BCE, John Hyrcanus II is murdered in a coup by Herod. This is the establishment of the reign of Herod the Great, and an end of the Hasmonean dynasty and the rise of the Herodian dynasty. This is the same Herod those of you who read the Bible will probably remember from the story of the birth of Christ, the one that tries to have the infant Jesus killed. That Herod, that group of people. It's him and his family. That's how they get set up. And actually, this remains a constant issue throughout Herod the Great's life. Even though he's called the Great, because he established, he renovated the Temple Mound in Jerusalem. He helped get Israel through some of the turbulent times during the wars of the Triumvirates, both the first and the second Triumvirate. He remained paranoid about being overthrown by another king, likely because he achieved his own power as a result of a coup. And this is why he would remain incredibly paranoid. He drove his own children into exile due to his threats of killing them because he feared they would come to power at his expense. His massacres in Bethlehem, all of these were results of his incredibly paranoid fear of someone overthrowing him. A paranoia that most likely developed from him having overthrown his own king to claim power for himself. So it's in this chaotic atmosphere that Jesus of Nazareth is born, around the year 1 CE, a small town called Bethlehem in Judea. It's also the same town where King David was born, way back around the turn of the millennium in the BCE period. Remember all that jazz. Now, many believed this new gentleman, Jesus of Nazareth, to be the Messiah. That's to say, the anointed Davidic descendant who was going to save Israel. Now, he preached a public ministry in Galilee and Judea. The teachings of Jesus involved many aspects of forgiveness and talk of salvation through going to heaven and salvation through him as the Son of God. And this claim to being the Son of God became one of the most divisive factors about Jesus' life, with certain groups of people embracing that claim that Jesus was not only the Messiah, but the Son of God. And these people would go on to eventually form the earliest followers of the Christian religion. Those who denied it tended to remain somewhat in the Jewish camp, what would later become rest of the sects of Judaism. Now, around the year 33 CE, Jesus is sentenced to death. He is condemned to crucifixion by the Roman governor Pontius Pilate. It should be noted that the scriptural passages describe Pilate as being fairly distraught at the process and the prospect of executing Jesus, which was a very uncharacteristic demeanor for Pilate. We have a lot of the records of his years as governor. He reigned for 10 years in that province, and during that time he presided over 1,000 crucifixions in those 10 years. That amounts to about 100 public executions per year. So this was not a guy that was terribly squeamish when it came to brutally executing people. That was kind of his bread and butter. So for him to show that much remorse was generally held to be a sign that this was a fairly remarkable individual, for him to feel that much guilt. Not that it was enough guilt to get him to not do it. Yeah, this is a hangman's judge we're talking about here. But at any rate, now, even though the Roman government is ultimately the agent of the execution, it's recorded that those who requested the execution was the Sanhedrin, the traditional council of high priests and scribes that presided over the temple in Jerusalem. And the high priest in that year was a man named Caiaphas. Now, let's talk about the messiahship of Jesus. So, in Christian belief, it's held that 3 days after Jesus' death on the cross, he was resurrected. He rose from the dead. He was held to have created a new covenant at the Last Supper, which took precedence over the previous covenant between God and Israel through Moses. Jesus is the second person in a single Trinitarian God. So at this point, I probably have to break down what that means, a Trinitarian God. And that's a bit of a problem because it's a very complex theological concept. The simplest way to put it is that there are 3 persons within a single God. I'm not really entirely sure how to put it. You could say 3 personalities, maybe. Might be a good way of looking at it, within a single God, but they're all the same substance and they're all the same God, at least in a traditional Trinitarian understanding, at least in a Western Trinitarian understanding. I should mention, exactly how this Trinitarian business works is going to be one of the earliest issues to start dividing Christianity, is how this business works. Now, some stuff about early Christianity. In the earliest days, that's within the first century itself, it's seen as a sect of Judaism. It's just one more type of Judaism. Many Christians maintain traditional Jewish laws, such as kosher laws and circumcision laws. They worshipped in the temple in Jerusalem. The only thing that separated them from a lot of other Jews was that the Pharisees, which were one of the main sects of Judaism that we talked about in earlier lessons, had an off-again, on-again persecution of the Christians during this period. That was the only thing that made them unique, was that they were a group. They were what seemed to be another sect of Judaism that a mainline sect of Judaism was actively targeting to try to remove. That might have been the only thing about them that would have given anyone at the time a sense of them being unique. So now we get to the destruction of the Second Temple. So what happened? So the First Roman-Jewish War. So there's one last thing I probably really should have talked. I may have talked to you about this a little bit before, and we talked about Judaism, but just to review. At the time, Jews living all over the world would usually give a donation every year to the temple. And many times this was given in money. Now, once money was consecrated for temple use, it could not be used for anything else. So money tended to build up in the temple. And the Roman governors eyed this with jealousy. And so finally, one of the governors decides to steal the gold. When the residents of Jerusalem learned that the gold, the special consecrated wealth of the temple that was supposed to only be used for the temple and for God, had been stolen, they're none